I don't know. There we are. We are live. Okay. Hi, everybody. Rick Tamlyn. Let's breathe, by the way. Let's just breathe. Yeah, good idea. So, very excited. This is on my Facebook page called Rick Tamlyn's Bigger Game page, right? Some of you have been following me in the mornings. I'm doing a Facebook Live every morning. I've been sort of so excited about sort of putting more messages out into the world that I wanted to even learn a new technology to even have it go better. So you're learning, I'm learning a new technology thing called StreamYard. I won't go into that right now. But really what this is about, you're now experiencing a launch moment of featuring people who in my language are bigger game players, sometimes clients, sometimes colleagues, sometimes wisdom pals, and sometimes commiserators, right? And so today I'm excited to have you all out in my world experience and hear some of the wisdom, and we'll do it together, you know, Anne Harbison, who I'm not going to do a gigantic introduction, anneharbison.com, go check her out. But Anne, I'll let you sort of, you know, you're like me, you're a talker, just sort of.
Oh yeah.
Bring your voice into this, and maybe the first question, like who, not how are you, but who are you and why are you?
Boy, why I am is I've been hearing this name Rick Tamlyn around like some mythical figure. You know, I was in proactive coaching, and Cargill's a big client of mine. You've done a lot of work. And I hit a wall about a year ago, and somebody literally over a drink said, "Why don't you call Rick Tamlyn?" And so I did. You probably remember that day. I think it was literally a year ago, because my daughter was moving into college that Saturday in August, end of August, and connected with you. But I am, you know, I'm in that same space, leadership and growth and teams and organizational excellence. And in some ways have been around for a long time, not my first rodeo. And in other ways, I feel like just that beginner's mind, like how do you do this work in the world at this moment? So glad to join you, Rick.
Well, the job here is to sort of have a conversation, and so let's just dive in. Just, you know, you're in the leadership space. I'm in the leadership space. I'm in the production space now too. I like to declare it. And you know, before our call, you were just proudly talking about a big thing you launched. It just happened today. But before we go to the sort of the doing and your products and the things that worlds can find you, what are you noticing about the leadership space right now? You know, what do you from your perspective?
Yeah, you know, I've had this phrase that has rattled around in my brain for years, and I always call it the achiever's dilemma, because, you know, I do executive coaching at, you know, a very senior level, and I feel like I'm so excited and honored and blessed to work with really talented, smart people who are making, you know, huge impact in the world. My background is more in business and, you know, management consulting. So I'm used to not just the one-on-one work, but these really big, complex businesses. But the very things that make achievers great in their career can really mess them up during times of crisis and transition. And so it's not about working harder, longer, being smarter. Like we don't even know what problem we're solving half the time, you know, during times of change. So I, you know, maybe a year ago, I decided to take a bit of a sabbatical after my talk with you a year ago. And I had 2 book ideas, and you witnessed this. And one was The Achiever's Dilemma, which is what I really feel like I understand. And the other one was called Never Waste a Crisis, which was something like 15 years ago I'd done my doctoral research on, about how really successful people handled crisis and how they enrich themselves.
Right.
So it's like, oh my gosh, like then COVID hits while I'm on a sabbatical writing about Never Waste a Crisis.
Right.
So yeah, here I am. I feel like I was made for this moment in a bizarre, humbling way. I actually am thriving in it. Not to minimize the pain we're all feeling, but a lot of my work is about joy and pain. That is the leadership journey, just being in there with all of it.
Well, one of your favorite phrases that I know you've shared with me, and we've been chatting about it and sort of almost branding it, is this all in.
Yeah.
Right. Sort of, you know, all in. And a little bit of your, if you're willing, and let me just pause for 1 second. So for those of you that are watching on Facebook, welcome. Feel free to write a question or a comment. Let me actually go to the Let me go to the right. Yeah. Okay. People are joining. Yeah. They're hello, Lori. Just, Christine said she couldn't make it, but feel free to say hello, jump in, and we'll have this be a bit interactive along the way if you have a question for either Anne or myself. So Anne, to your point, my language, people in my world know it, like creating from life, right?
Yeah.
Not trying to get over life.
Yeah.
You've had some amazing circumstances, dark and light, whatever you want to choose. But what was the what was the word you used that you told me you like to sort of the earliest memory or the earliest challenge that sort of sparked your creative juice in this direction? Hello, Jeff. Hello, Gilmore.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that kind of in two ways, because I was thinking about all in and what that means to me and at this point in time. But what you just said was like kind of what was that earliest inkling. I do kind of feel like the older I get, I don't know if it's mystical or what, but I'm starting to feel like, man, like, of course I'm here in this moment. And I couldn't have planned this out if I were in charge. Thank goodness I'm not. But going back to the earliest, how I even got into this leadership space, and especially this area of being all in, never waste a crisis, the joy, the sorrow. I grew up in the Bible Belt in Kentucky, Appalachia in the 70s. And whenever I'm with leadership classes, one of my first exercises is, what was your earliest passion? And people get into these like elaborate stories about, oh, I'd get my Legos lined up and then I'd do them alphabetical and then by color. And I'm like, oh, and you happen to be an engineer. Or,
Right.
they just, whatever their story is, there's this light that shines. And I think, that was a 7-year-old where nobody told them to do that. Nobody said you need to be organized and blah, 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 goal oriented. And mine was, I didn't play dolls or nurse or whatever. I played preacher. So I'd get my stuffed animals and stuff, and I'd have a message, and we would sing, and there'd be a call to, the altar. And, and since then, my religious faith journey has been all over the place. But I laugh because here I'm in this leadership space, but it is about touching people's hearts, connecting them to something bigger than themselves, and mobilizing them to action. And I'm saying that, as a 53-year-old, but I'm like, that daggone 6-year-old in Kentucky was doing that. So that's that earliest passion. And my career on paper has been kind of circuitous. I was at Procter & Gamble, and I was at Gallup, and I've had my own company. And but it's been that through line about mobilizing others to inspire them and to really talk about something greater than us. That's where I am. So,
well, I'm going to sort of dance with you on that concept. It's like, we kind of try this on as a perspective, everybody, and bounce off of it. Like, we know what we're about.
Yeah.
Early on. And we make it so difficult along the way to what's my career, what's my path, how do I make a boatload of money from it? We all know the game. And if we can kind of slow down and get behind the curtain and go, okay, what is the through line of my life?
And I think, if people are familiar with Gallup and their work with strengths, it's the idea of talent. It's something that's within you very early on. And even by the age like 8 and 10, we have empirical evidence that some of those neural pathways that are going to end up being your speedway, those are already starting to be paved.
Okay, hold on. That is a genius line.
Okay.
Hang on. Your neural pathway is your speedway or something, right? I mean, me, I'm like always looking for little taglines.
Oh, I know. You and I could go off on a metaphor,
Tangent.
Yeah. But I mean, that really is, that's one thing I love about, I'm a qualitative, creative person, but I love that the science of leadership, the science of talent, the science of well-being has caught up, where we actually know there's a neurological basis for early passion. And it's different than things that we learn how to do because we had to, because it was the competency checklist, and the reason I mention that is just, for me, the language of talent is very empowering. And when I bring that, anyone that has kids or knows a kid, you see that it's humbling. They come out the way they are, and we do our best to love them up and raise them up. But, whether it's, I laugh, I always tell a story about competition. My husband's family hardcore athletes. My mother-in-law was an Olympic speed skater, and I'm a girl from the South that wants a nap and a gin and tonic. I don't have that kind of drive, but in this family, my husband's family, you're going to compete and you're going to be great at it. And all our kids are super athletic. But my daughter, who's really athletic, great swimmer,
Right.
when she was young, she'd be swimming and she'd get to a meet and like snailing it down the lane. And my husband, trying to be calm, like, sweetheart, what's going on? She's like, oh, I hate to feel rushed. It's like, you're supposed to feel rushed. It's a race. And then our son would wake up and he'd be up in the middle, the first thing in the morning, he's like, who woke up first? He'd want to rank how fast people slept, So, I mean, those little precious things you see in kids, that is a clue to talent, passion, how we're wired. So, for me, it was storytelling and pulling together groups. And even in this leadership space, I'm super fascinating about how teams and communities create together, and how, personally, a lot of times when we coach, one-on-one, people are much more willing to share the underbelly, their darker times, their struggles, because that's a safer place. But what has really drawn me in is how teams can do that together. And more, of course, I want them to have a shared strategy. That's almost table stakes. Yeah, you need to be on the same page about where are we
going, right? What are we doing?
Great. That's, price of entry. I want to know if you have a shared identity. Do you belong to each other? Do you have each other's back? Yeah. And in that case, when you create that, I've never seen a leader be vulnerable and the team turn against them. I've only seen the team lean in more. Now, of course, you need that holding space. They've done the work to have a shared identity. But boy, when you have that, it's beyond what strategy can do.
Yeah.
Who cares what's on paper? If you're not my people, if you don't have my back, if you don't get me on my worst day, my best day, it's flat. And so, that's in the last couple of years in particular. And do you mind if I just jumped in earlier? Now I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll. Well, can I make one comment? I know I'm intrigued.
Yeah, please, I want to talk about the all-in, but stop me.
No, it's good. It's just the thing. My version, or I just want to offer, some of you've heard me say this, like what you do, by the way, Anne, is one of the gifts you have, is you create safe space. Mm-hmm. Right? And when a space is safe, the creativity goes up.
Yeah.
I'm always training organizations with you in the same concept, like stop worrying about creativity. Don't do a creativity workshop, do a connection safe building workshop.
Yes.
And then the creativity will erupt. Because if it's not safe, there's nothing's going to happen. And that's true for humans, to your point. Mm-hmm. Like if I don't feel safe in this body, in this soul, on this planet, my creativity gets compromised.
That's exactly right. It's like the idea we're human beings, being, not human doings. So if we can be in a way that's really humane, we generate, we create, we connect. I mean, this is where you and I are.
Yeah, exactly. And the rest sort of takes care of itself.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm not a strategist. I don't even personally, the word makes me a little.
I love strategy.
I know, that's the paradox.
And I still think it's flat without that creativity.
Yeah. Okay, so you were going to go other places. I hope you remember you were.
Of course. Yeah, no. You just talked about like this philosophy of all in. And I do. We have hats in our house. You'll see it on my t-shirts. And, it means like bringing everything. And you can take it from like diversity and inclusion. Like I'm all in. I'm bringing who I am to work. I'm not, checking part of it at the door, or I'm all in good times and bad. But, my story that 5 years ago, we actually very suddenly, of course, very tragically lost our 9-year-old son. And he was a hockey player. We were actually in the middle of a weekend hockey tournament here in Minnesota. How this Kentucky girl ended up a hockey mom in Minnesota, that's another story. But, that's a story that, just even hearing what you've heard, like, boy, you lose a son. Of course, our lives are devastated. Of course, forever, I'm a different person. Every single thing I knew changed, April 13th, 2015. So there's so many directions to go with that, but what happened with my work, because I didn't work for about 6 months, and I've always been somebody that I had started Journey Lead by then. I had my own firm. I would have said, like, everyone that knows me knows work is my deepest joy.
Journey Lead, by the way, is the name of
Journey Lead is the name, and it was really purposeful. Like, I'm a Journey Sherpa. You have to do the work. You're on your own leadership journey, but I know the terrain. I'm willing to carry some of the weight. I'm here to encourage you. So I didn't work for about 6 months. And when I went back to work, I've told you this, Rick, I think I've done the best work of my career in the last 4 years because I'm more bold and I'm more compassionate. And that's happened because I've experienced, a parent's worst nightmare, but, one of the deepest tragedies. And what was really beautiful is the client I came back to was a client that I knew well. My husband had worked there, and they allowed me to come back and be full. Like, I didn't need to come in and tell Ben's story and talk about grief. But you know what? If I had of, that was fine. Like, I could bring who I was as a top-notch consultant, being at the top of my game, being bold, and being really, really familiar with grit and loss and devastation. And so here we, fast forward 5 years, and people are uncertain and scared, and they didn't see it coming, and they feel robbed. I felt robbed. How could this happen? I was just about to get my promotion. I was just about to get married. I was just about to fill in the blank. And that's what being all in is. It's not like, yeehaw, positivity and, motivation talks. It's like, what is happening right now? The whole range of emotion, the whole range of the human condition. Great. Let's lean in and work with it. And so it's almost, I started off talking about, the altar call about, like being a mission or, this missionary. And I do feel like there's kind of a spiritual element of my work that I was meant for this moment, because I speak from we all speak from our own life truth and experience, but I can tell you there is gold in the grit, even in grief, that can be used for very, very powerful transformation moments. And now that we've had COVID, I've actually had a greater opening to talk about what I know about loss, and how we can thrive.
Yep. Well, to blend with it, because we've all now collectively as a globe all experienced loss at a level that we never thought we would have. Yeah. So there's this common ground, fill in the blank. I lost this. I lost a loved one. I lost my job. I lost so you're in the sweet spot. And many of us are, by the way, in this space. And to your point earlier, to me, no disrespect to the literal losses that are happening right now.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, right? I mean, life, business, money. I mean, let's just be really, the compassion level is off the charts. So, so what's the? You've been talking a lot about what matters. Like, what's like leaders point us in a direction, the concept, meet people where they are and then point them in a direction. So there's, if some people will watch later, where would you point us? If I were in your workshop, which you, by the way, you all have to check her out. She does great workshops and great trainings. But where would you point us? And I can be your participant, I'm kind of a messed up human half the time. And, So.
Well, for me, it's inward and outward. Every single retreat I do, I don't care if senior executives, the first part about looking inward as a team, as a person. And then the second part is leading outward, like in service of, for what, like self-development, team development, for what purpose?
Right.
And so I love the image of like a mighty oak where going deep, those roots, the foundation, the fertile soul, like that is what I would say to leaders, is that you have to be grounded yourself before you do a pep talk, before you do a statistics and probability update, before you, whatever. What are your deep roots? What nurtures you? I mean, you can take that metaphor and really run with it, because that is not just your stability, but it's your legacy, it's your history. You don't get that overnight. Those are the dues you have paid. And there was something that really struck me when we lost Ben. Through that next year in grief counseling, I learned that whatever is good in your life before a tragedy, so like meaningful work, a strong relationship, a faith, whatever that is, whatever is good in your life before a tragedy will save your life during and after a tragedy. So those are your roots. You don't just get that. You don't get a book in the crisis guide, I'm going to do these 10 steps and get through this. It's like, we have got to invest now. And people that have been investing in leadership development and culture and inclusion during the quote normal times, they are doing better now. They are thriving during the tough times. So that digging deep is such an important thing, but then it has to be in service of what? To
Yeah.
bear fruit where, to flourish where. And it could be nonprofit, it could be investment banking. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
Of what? You manifest that depth into the world in real ways. To be honest, that was my message 6 years ago. It's my message now. But I just feel like in times of crisis, you get down to what the truths are about the world, about nature, about people. And that one served me well. Like, dig deep, reach wide.
You've got, I mean, I love your phrases. It's so true. So, the simple dig deep, what was it? You just said it.
Dig deep, reach wide.
Wide. Yeah, I know. Right. So
and some people, even that word matters, right? Because they say like dig deep and the stars. That's pretty two-dimensional. Reach wide.
Yeah.
What is your achievement, your acceleration, your speed? That's the achiever's dilemma. Like, sure, I'll meditate if I can get a promotion faster. Like, sure, I'll take care of myself if I can, it's like two this way. You dig deep, but think about the roots. The roots don't go just down, they go out. And in fact, that's when they start to intertwine with other trees and other root systems and other, the ecology of the earth. And so wide is not just up and aspirational, but it's out. And when you go out, when you look at a tree, that's when it gets messy. It's like the more the branches go out. So I'll stop with this metaphor, but reaching.
No, I'm sort of riveted to I'm riveted to the keynoter that's happening right now. It's a beautiful. It's sort of obvious. It's and by the way, folks, comment or write questions. We're going to sort of open it up to Q&A if you want in a few moments. But well, first of all, I just want to comment on that. I've similar language. It's just, I love this concept of sort of like, it's kind of about me, like aspirational up, I'm connected to the earth and my aspirate, but you're right. And so the language I've played with there over the years is to live a horizontal life, not just a vertical life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting language. So I'm going to maybe push you or have you say, when you say go deep, can you ground, what does that even mean from your world? Because it's used a lot, right? Go deep.
Yeah. It's funny because in the leadership space, this is going to wildly oversimplify it, but you have a lot of coaching or even like more therapeutic one-on-one models that going deep, you almost think of like analysis, or I'm going to think about my deep, it's the depth is seen from more from a psychoanalytic
dark self, right?
Yeah. Just because my background is more, business and organizational life and management consulting, that's like, no, I do that myself. That's not what my lead line, in a corporate setting. What I mean about going deep is being authentic about what's really happening. So it's more like stripping away versus maybe over analyzing situations. So it's actually about I think about
that's a great distinction.
Yeah. So there were all these things that came out after we lost Ben that like these little sayings that kept us grounded. And one was space and grace. And when you're scared or in trouble or conflict, we all just need to create some physical space, psychological space, graciousness, because you're going to mess up. You're going to say things you don't mean. Your not best self is going to show up. And so I think about that space and grace as a little bit, that's not going deep, but it's just that lightness almost. So I'm switching my metaphors, but space and grace is a big one. And then the other one was, we don't have to be strong for each other, but we'll find strength in each other. And so that helped us go deep as a family because it took away a need to pretend.
Yes, right.
And so you'd show up in your brokenness or,
right.
I'm crying at the table and it's my 14-year-old daughter comforting me. And that was okay. That was deep for our family, that the rules and of our roles, what it meant to be a 14-year-old or a mom or a dad. It's like, we were all just space and grace, find strength within each other. And so when I think about what it means to be deep, I think what does it mean to be real and to not fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great distinction because you're right. You don't have to do. There's this paradox of do the inner work. So that means I'm going to sort of go to my history and it has a therapeutic context versus.
I just want to throw this out. There was I don't know if it was in the Washington Post, but just today there was an article about toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And this need, like in times of crisis or pain, people want to be a cheerleader, and how unhelpful that is. People don't want to wallow in their pain. They don't want to, you earlier today, you don't want to like bring your RV and park and live there. But our pain shows us what's most meaningful to us. Yeah. So when we feel pain from loss, it's because there was something there of value that we cared deeply for. So when I talk about depth and authenticity, it's about letting the pain and the hope and all that be part of it.
All in. Yeah. So great comments. I'm just going to read a couple. Kathy Langner, being true to who you are, being true to others. I'm sure you're seeing these too. I think Marilyn Crouch saying being real always works. Yeah. And it's one of those topics, by the way, it feels obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But
I guess the one thing I'll say that makes this a leadership conversation versus just, be real, right?
Human conversation.
Is this can happen. You see leaders that they're real and they tell all these stories about themselves and they get weepy and you're like, oh my God, where's this going, right? It's being real in service of.
Right.
Okay. So like when I've been coaching leaders during COVID, it's been just be real before you even think you're going to solve a problem. But at the same time, if you're open and personal and transparent, it's in service of, we can do this. I'm with you. So that's the difference. I think when we start to see people going like wallowing and we all kind of like get, that feels icky.
Yeah.
Well,
it always goes to why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me? Like if I'm in a meeting and the leader kind of goes to, well, I'm telling you about I've just been diagnosed with, and you're like, okay, what am I doing with this? What am I doing with the information? Right. And so that's context, right? It's the context setting.
Yeah.
What's the question I haven't asked you that I should ask you? That's the like.
Well, this line of thought is just really fascinating to me. And so just about how people, when they respond and it's like, okay, and what, right? Yeah. And this feels a little vulnerable for me to say, like, these are leadership lessons from grief. That's not going to be a bestseller, right? But I'm just going to share that right now. But when my 14-year-old daughter went back to school, after Ben died, I told her, I said, people are going to say things to you like, oh, my dog died. I know just how you feel. I said, just no judgment. Like that person is trying to connect to you. Yep, and so this happens now with leaders, right? Like, oh, I feel your pain. Yep. I didn't get my paycheck on time. It's like we're trying to connect when you hear people's sad story, but that's really not helpful. I can't tell you how many people's bad stories I heard. I was like, well, that's great. Didn't think I could feel worse, but now I do. So no judgment. People are trying to connect, and you can get out of there. Be there, connect, and kind of take care of yourself. And leaders right now, how leaders are caring for themselves while being hopeful and grounded. That's a big issue right now in our leadership space.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of naming again, somewhat obvious, but connection is not a technique.
Yeah. Actually, the last thing people need right now is a martyr or a hero.
Totally.
Totally. Get over that. Like martyrs don't win ultimately. They make us, it's just like guilt trippy, like, great, you saved the day. And the hero is like, really? The answer? You can save us? I don't think so. So that's what I mean about being real and connected. You don't have to play a role to rescue others. And that's kind of hubris in this environment to even think that's a possibility.
Well, I think you just brilliantly named what's going on. I can feel it in myself when you say it. I can feel it in other people that I work with. I can feel it in the sort of the kind of the consciousness. If we're looking for something to blame and we're looking for something to save me.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of, again, going back to this, what I call the achiever's dilemma.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, a person identifies as achiever. I get stuff done. It's like the world depends on me solving the problem and working hard and overfunctioning. And it's, there's just such a disservice and untruth to that. And in times of crisis, getting pulled and thinking, I have to solve the problem. I have to be the martyr. I have to be the hero. It helps no one. And it really inhibits a leader at the very time when they need the most access to their most creative resources. And it's not achieving at that point.
Right.
I did a post that said we need to significantly lower our standards during COVID. And I got some back, I'm like, listen, I'm all about high executive performance. Like I'm not letting people off the hook. What I mean is less striving to achieve and higher standards for being present, higher standards for hanging in there, higher standards for expressing pain, but lowering our standards for what we're going to achieve and get done. So.
Well, and isn't that been the case? That should be the case anyway.
Yeah.
Then the system sort of takes care of itself, and the creativity happens, and the loyalty comes in, and I want to work, and I'm, so, I mean, I've been working with some organization as well, and they're all now realizing what they've got to do is take care of their people, because they're now, most of the people, is really pragmatic conversation or sort of answer here, or thought. The hours in the day, because I'm so afraid of losing my job, and I can do it from my home now. Start at 7 a.m. and I work till 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And
they realize, oh my God, we're going to burn these people out. Right. Yeah. So the burnout level that's going to come out of this is huge. So it's been about a half an hour, just time wise. And folks that are watching, if you have a question or a thought, we'd love to sort of give some open time here, and we can keep chatting for a few minutes, or, and I'll just do a little, I'm going to sort of underline Anne's work in the world for a moment. This is my new favorite little technology. So bear with me. I'm going to do a branding thing here for a second. I'm going to show you some of Anne's clients, just to kind of, show you off a little bit. So you guys can see this, right? We overlapped with Cargill, which was lovely. We did a lot of coaching, leadership development with Cargill. So that's just a toe in the water of the organization that Anne has worked with. So, that I don't know how that feels to sort of do that, but I just,
what? It's so funny.
Yeah.
I just think of when I see that, like I fall in love with my clients, it's like, I just think, oh yeah, that was with Rebecca, and that was with, like, it just is all of a sudden, like, it's like seeing a scrapbook of your kids, I see my client list, and it's not like, oh, I'm so cool. It's like, oh my God, those were good times.
Well, what I just love you did is you just gave them a face. It wasn't just a client.
Yeah. Oh no, people. I moved to Minnesota because of Best Buy, and that was my first gig on my own.
Right. Okay, so here's a question, Anne, Eileen. Anne, I know you have a thought about learning from failure. Can you talk a little bit about that? This is Eileen McGowan.
No, Eileen! Oh my gosh, we were doctoral students at Harvard.
Oh my God, I love when
way back. Eileen is just one of the top thought leaders about mentoring and women's development. Oh, shame on us that it took this for us to reconnect. Yeah, so my dissertation was on learning from failure. And I'll say two things about that. There's something about, well, first of all, failing obviously is not helpful, that term. It's like, I love Oprah. Like if it was fail, is just take a different course, right? Yeah. But to the extent that we attach to something that went bad and it hurt, when it's in public, it matters. And there's actually some benefits from it being in public, because when it's not in public, like I was fired, but I didn't tell anybody, or it actually goes inward and stays in this place of shame. And so when a failure is public, and Eileen knows this, my dissertation was during the .com era, it was with entrepreneurs that had failed. It was like a doctor who had, killed someone basically because of human error. I mean, these were big public failures. It's like me losing my son or COVID. It's like, jig is over. Like, you don't have a place to hide. This is bad, and so that actually propels them. This is my whole point of never wasted crisis. These were not things we would ask for. We would go out of our way for this to never, ever happen. We would lie, cheat, and steal to get out of this situation. But when it has happened, like right now, COVID, what are you going to do? And that is when you have to get deep, get real, ask for help, reframe, be humble. That is, Eileen, God bless you. That is my passion. I'm feeling my whole body like tingle right now, because I fell in love with those, interview, doctoral subjects 18, 20 years ago. And I think about them, and that's put me on a path. It's like, there's a lot at stake, your identity, your confidence, your work in the world, your talents. And so let's rally and make something out of that, versus that being one of the deepest identifiers and shame anchors for the rest of your career. What a waste. So just thanks for giving me that opening. I feel like that learning from failure dissertation that I think came out in 2005. And now here we are 15 years later, and it's like, let's learn from crisis. We would have never asked for this. Shame on us if we waste this moment.
Yeah, right. A term you just said in there. Say it again, Anne. I interrupted you. Say that again.
No, thanks, Eileen.
Yeah. A term you just said, it's just such a good term. You need to everybody write this down. Shame anchor. Like such a, first of all, like it's just and I think we all have one, right? And so it's a great metaphor to go, oh my God, where does my shame, where's my hook to my shame anchor?
I'll tell you, Shannon Kelly helped me. She's my coach. And she said, shame's like a dark lover. It just keeps lurking around and you get kind of seduced by it, but like no good comes of it. You need to drop that boy like a hot rock. But that's a tough one. And when it comes to work in the world and failure and crisis, we don't have time for that, man. We need to be called to something bigger and better. Yeah.
Boy, I can tell a story. I won't right now, but of one of my most failed moments in a room. I've only had two. One lives in me like it just lives, and it's 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
But it lives like it was yesterday.
Oh, I can't even remember to start drinking. Believe me, I've got one or two that I still just cringe.
Yeah. So. It'd be fun. I know this is a weird idea, but I'm inspired to create a Zoom call, and everybody brings that unbelievably embarrassing worst story, shame story ever about a big failure, and we just listen to each other. I'm sure you do.
I have to say, I went on this path. I took Ron Heifetz's class in 1994. His book, Leadership Without Easy Answers, had just come out. I was actually in divinity school at the time. I first went to Harvard. I was at Harvard Divinity School studying theology, but couldn't get leadership out of my bones. So I went over to the Kennedy School of Government studying with Ron. But his whole methodology is, you present a failure. And then I worked on his staff, and a lot of people in that mid-career program became my, research subjects during my dissertation. So that idea, and even Bill George at Harvard now talks about the crucible. Yeah. And at Harvard Business School, they present the thing that brought them to their knees. And without fail, that was the moment of transformation. For me, it was losing my son. Before I lost my son, I had a doctor from Harvard. I had a great career. I had my own business. Pshaw. It's like pre-bin and post-bin. What I bring to the table now after being brought to my knees, it's at a different level. And I say that with just such humility and compassion. That is the human condition. We don't choose these things. And
no, right?
We would give them back readily.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay, my brain is already thinking about my crucible. The language you're giving me, I love language, and I know you do too. Yeah. When you give us these words, like, oh my God, what's my crucible? What's my knees to the floor moments?
Let me give you one more word, and you tell me with time, right? Because you got to rein me in.
It's good.
And Eileen knows this because she was in my writing group where we talked about what language is meaningful for people. Yeah. And I said, this word failure is a turn off, Yeah. And so my first chapter is called Disorienting Dilemmas. Yeah. Disorienting Dilemmas. Yeah. So these are those kind of problems that they feel icky. They don't go away. They have an emotional resonance. There's no right answer. Years later, you're still cringing. That means there's something there worth going deep. Something about your identity, your values, your confidence in the world was shaken. And the disorientation is the impetus for growth and exploration. Yep. And then, of course, that's what leads to transformation. So disorientation is a really good place to start. Right now, people talk about uncertainty and loss. Look at the places you're disoriented. It means there's cracks in the foundation of what did hold you up pre-COVID, and that's a great place to start if you're looking about how can I not just survive this, but thrive. Right. And the way we thrive is we go back to the foundations that now have cracks and look really honestly what was good about that and what wasn't. And we actually have a chance to rebuild after crisis. That is a gift. That is the creative destruction, gift of tragedy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm voting. I love the language. You know me. Language is so important. Disorienting event, disorienting. Right? And that's a great distinction rather than I'm hearing a lot of overwhelmed and confused.
Yeah. Well, and even the word dilemma, which can sound kind of negative, I talk about like the achiever's dilemma, the caretaker's dilemma, and this disorienting dilemma. The dilemma is like, well, what's she going to do? What are you going to do now?
Right.
Like you're in this situation, your identity is in being an achiever or being a caretaker. So your dilemma is, okay, what's next? And are you going to take the challenge? Are you going to dance with this? Because guess what? What used to be is no longer an option.
Yeah. And it's not the word problem.
Well, no, that's really different. It's not an opportunity. Oh, I can leverage and maximize. And oh my God, if I hear that again, I'm going to lose my mind. It's like, opportunity is true, but it's about growth and transformation.
Yeah. That's so good. Oh my God. And I just want to go on. I'm just stating the obvious to the world that's watching. We get why she's sort of a force to be reckoned with out there. So, Kim Heischke had a really quick question. If we have a few more minutes, we do. I'm just deciding we do. I'm curious about how you still encourage people to be their best and also be there when they need to look after their humanity. Not sure if that makes sense. Sort of like calling people forth at the same time being with their mess, I think is another way to say it. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right, Kim? You'll comment, Kim. Encourage people and be there.
Yeah. So first of all, you don't have to be your best all the time. I'm like, right now, figure out a couple areas of your life you can be a B-, and that's fine. So that there's 1 or 2 areas of life you can be an A+. Right. And so that's like at the very being your best, like in terms of excellence and like letting yourself off the hook. You don't have to be your best self every day. Good Lord, that's really irritating. Like be your best self when you need to be around the people you love and when the stakes are high. Other days, you do a nap and a gin and tonic and watch Dr. Phil. Like we have to have like a little lightness about being our best all the time. And I'm glad to carry that message.
Yeah.
That's one. The other thing is, the word compassion, in Latin is to be with suffering. And I talk a lot about this. I did 40 days of surviving and thriving when COVID hit. I actually launched it on April 1st, but actually it was the first time I publicly wrote about what I had learned about grief in terms of leadership. It was the first time I kind of put it out there more publicly. And I had a whole series of what we learned, lessons from loss, lessons from grief. And this whole idea of holding space. We are not there to fix. We are not there to convince. We are not there to solve. We are not there to resource. We are there to be with suffering. And in that series, I tell I could weep like in a heartbeat, thinking of powerful examples of people that were just with me, So you can see the emotional resonance of like 5 years ago. I can think of these moments when I was broken. And just somebody was just there. And I'll just give one example. There were some women, and later I found out they used to laugh that the introverts finally have a role. They were introverts. They didn't want to do all the casserole runs and come to the memorial and do the bin legacy fund, but they called themselves women in the house. And these women, for those first couple months, especially when Steve went back to work and my daughter went to school, they would just be in the house. And this wasn't suicide watch. This was just somebody was in the house. They weren't talking to me. They weren't cleaning my cupboards. They weren't doing my laundry. They were in the house. And the reason I have such deep emotion is the power of compassion to suffer with requires nothing of you than to be present and loving. And anything else I've said just really kind of pales in comparison to the power of doing that as a leader.
Okay. So, I can feel the part of me goes, okay, where do I go with this?
Yeah, no,
it's nowhere to go. You've just.
Let me just kind of pull that full circle. Being your best means just being with. Being your best means holding space. And that's back to the achiever's dilemma. It's not about achieving or excelling or shining. Sometimes it's just showing up that is what really matters.
Yeah, so you all get why Anne has been a collaborator and a co-creator and a fan, and I'm a fan of hers, and we're in the similar space. So, so here's the connection moment. Anne, tell them how they find you. I want to make sure a little moment here. I'm going to put logo on the screen. There's her logo. Yeah. Look how that pops up. Isn't that fun, everybody?
Yeah. So most people know me in the space, Journey Lead Consulting. So I have a boutique consulting firm here in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, that I've had for about 10 years. And we focus on senior executive leadership teams. And my husband, Steve Rudicelli, is in that business with me, and we have a great team. And I've loved that and done that. And then about a year ago, I decided I've got to get all this stuff in my head. I need to finally write the book. And so I didn't join a book club. I joined a Write the Damn book club. And so I started really getting serious about writing, and then COVID hit. And so now I'm doing some online work, which has been a challenge for me, but it's just a powerful shaking up of how can we still learn and create intimacy and actual transformational learning in a virtual world. So there's a free course that I have that's called Surviving and Thriving. It's a great 6-week course that came out of my 40-day series. And then we just launched our first paid course called Career Crossroads. And it's just, okay, we're at a crossroads about work in the world and meaningful work. And I just launched that last Friday. So that's really exciting, and that'll continue to build. I'll be offering that about 6 times a year, and you can find out more about that on anneharbison.com.
Yeah, which I just put there. Yeah, there's a lot of information there. So, and I just want to underline, you are a role model for me and for many of, my language of create from and go out with, like look in and then go out and put it into the world, so because the business I'm in is outing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so great to feel you so out with your good work in the world. God bless you for doing it.
You're when I heard you say make your mess your message, I'm like, oh, I love this guy. I'm like, I got that. I can sign up for that.
Yeah. So anything else, Anne? I mean, first of all, congratulations, and truly.
No, we got a love connection here, but Rick, you are a joy. You are just a spark in what you've done. You've been a turning point for me. You are a career crossroads. When I made that phone call to you a year ago about I need to bring my work in the world in different ways.
Yeah.
And you've been just a great guide for that. So.
Well, you're very welcome. It's the shift, I will dare say, and for many of you listening, I want to offer this. It's sort of like now it's now about the work coming through you, more than I'm a consultant and a trainer. It's just finding different expressions. Your 40-day program, which is free, by the way, everybody. Like there's different because form. The 40th day, the very last 40-day, the title was The World is Waiting. Yeah, the world. And somebody had said, like, how did you finally start writing? You've been talking about writing for 15 years. Yeah. I was like, no, I got over myself. Yeah, like the need of the world was bigger than my weirdo ego. Like what a gift. I don't have to be at the mercy of my neurotic impulses if I'm ready or not. Like we don't have time for that. The world is waiting. Put it out there. And you have been a great example. My favorite answer to "Are you ready?" is no, but oh well, do it anyway. Okay. I mean, when I, it's like when I used to have a one-on-one gym guy, a trainer at a gym, he'd go, "Are you ready?" I'd go, "No, I'm not ready to lift all those weights." He goes, "Just do it." Yeah. Anyway, it's a pleasure to chat with you, Anne.
Great. So great, Nick. Thank you.
You're welcome. Much success. You know where to find me. We're in relationships. So
I'm trying to
check out AnneHarbison.com. Go check her out. Lots of cool work over there. So thank you for doing the good work, honey. More to come.
All right. Mwah.
Blessings, everybody. Thank you for watching. We're hoping that's activated something in you. Go run with it. You don't have to agree with it, but hopefully it activated something in you that you can go grab and sort of enhance your life or enhance somebody else's life with some of this wisdom today. So thank you, Anne, for your wisdom.
You bet. Thanks so much.
You bet. Bye for now. Bye, Gilmore. Bye, everybody who's watching. I'm going to push the end broadcast button.
Okay.